Alright, so Oz just dropped his killer tier list 8.4.0 for DVD, and we're just gonna react to the Ghostface section and just kind of see what the vibes are.
Has received some nice buffs to its cooldown and stalking rate, so to speak. They've made two of his best add-ons, which are brown add-ons, into his base kit partially, which is awesome. This also adds up to some buffs that he got some time ago that made his cooldown add-ons base kit as well. So like, good stuff. Overall, Ghostface has gotten some love.
Okay, so I have spoken extensively about the Ghostface changes that we've received as of recent. We had, what they basically did was split the add-ons in half, so Philly got split from 20 to 10, and then the matchbook went from 6 to 3. My issues mainly were the fact that we had to wait so long for the changes to occur, and then what the changes were just, hey look, we're shifting the values over. The reveal mechanics are just very apparent when you're dealing with Ghostface, and obviously, you know, the matchbook does at least help kind of slightly counter it, because at least you know if you do get revealed, you'll just get your power back in about 14 seconds, so that's always fine. However, you know, it doesn't really give you much in return because obviously you don't really have your power most of the time because of that problem. But I do understand like where Otz is coming from, because he's saying that in addition to the changes that we've received in the past, this is good that we're getting more changes for Ghostface in general, so that I can agree with. However, like from the perspective that I was standing at, we had waited so long for a buff something, and then what we got was very minuscule and doesn't at all change the game for him. It's barely pretty. And my biggest issue was that you put on the add-ons and you're having the same exact values as you would pre-patch. So people who use the add-ons will just continue to use the add-ons, and the people who don't can pretty much not really notice a difference, because obviously if a 20-second cooldown to 17 is just not gonna really be that noticeable. It's still a very long cooldown for how little that you actually can do in this ability. Obviously it's just look at people with it and then get insta reveal through a wall, so like it's not really like there's much in that sense. So I do agree with that.
Unfortunately, he's still a killer that compared to everything else, compared to all of the new releases, he's a pretty basic killer. Insta-downing survivors is obviously useful, but it's quite map dependent. It's punishing if you make mistakes.
100% agree with this as well. Literally, it's very basic, especially in comparison to what we have. Very basic ability, very simplistic, and that's taking into account just what he can do, which is simply look at you, make you exposed, you one-shot down them. Simple as that. And that's why the map dependency is definitely toward average to high, because you can easily get Auto Haven, Garden of Joy, Swamp Map, any of them. You can get any of the Auto Havens, McMillans. You could probably even get, I mean, sheesh, like anything that is an RPD or midwitch, and you're probably going to struggle, especially if they are like experienced, you know, Swifts like that. If you're going against like tough teams, it's just going to be a struggle. Your Crows even, like very struggle bus. You're really just not going to be able to make a lot happen. And also, yes, and I do also agree that if you do end up making any mistakes, you're probably going to feel it very heavily when you do play against like tough opponents and you're at the highest level. For it's going to be just difficult, you know. So this is a character that is very non-forgiving, I would say, when it comes to making mistakes, when it comes to trying to make comebacks and things like that. It really is extremely reliant on if you were able to just have something prepared for it. So for example, like if you have a couple of survivors already pre-stocked, you know, then you can probably make something happen, and even then that's a chance, because you know you down them and then it goes on cooldown. So it's very one note in that way. And also touching on that is, well, I was going to mention the add-ons being average to weak. I would completely agree with that. Like the situation that I use as an example where you can potentially get a comeback and really leverage the game all the way back to your side with, say, having maybe 4 survivors stocked up, you would probably need the iridescent add-on that recharges your power each down. Very basic killer. I completely agree with everything he's saying up to this point, that there's I completely agree. He should be in D tier, probably lower if you ask me, like maybe around like where Trapper's at, like just swap those two around or something, because it's just really dark. It's just not the greatest, you know, at least at the highest, like at the higher levels.
You want to have information perks, but you're also a basic killer, so you're gonna miss that somewhere. You're very vulnerable to all of the meta stuff that survivors will bring, will probably hurt you in some way.
He says if you go against the meta stuff, you're gonna struggle. 100% agree. If you end up eating a DS, if you have to deal with Off the Record, Deliverance, I mean, you could even consider Shoulder the Burden, Dead Hard. I mean, it's gonna hurt really bad for a character like this, because you need all the pressure you can get whenever you can get it and wherever you can get it. And if there is anything that's meta, it's going to hurt his potential. It will, plain and simple. You know, he doesn't have map mobility, right? No teleporting, sprinting, jumping, flying. He has nothing, right? So he has none of that stuff. You're on foot, right? And you have to go from point A to point B on very large maps and things like that. And then if they do for some reason have an endurance or have Dead Hard or have Off the Record or have DS or have any list of the perks, you're probably gonna struggle a little bit, you know. And it is what it is, and that also adds on to the map dependency and the add-ons, you know, obviously. Which, to touch on the add-ons once more, I mean, most of the add-ons are like that I consider to be the strongest are just cooldown based. You know, it's a big problem for Ghostface, because his power is as limited as it is, which is, you know, being undetectable and, you know, applying an expose, which arguably I'd say Myers does better in a way. And he also has the add-ons that do delete a survivor out of the game, so like Ghostface is kind of fall behind in that way as well. So I would kind of move Myers up just a little if it were me.
But yeah, don't feel bad about any of that, because Ghostface is still pretty fun. You can play him in a very casual way, just use his stealth and sneak up and ambush people. You can play him in a more tactical way, where you 99 the stalk on people, and then later when you find them in a more vulnerable spot, you pop it and instant on them. At no point do you want to mark a survivor and then go on a long chase with them. That's not how Ghostface thrives. He has a few add-ons here and there with some nasty effects, but for the most part they are fairly restrained, not super scary. And I think
I completely agree with this as well. If you are a casual Ghostface player, if you are an average Ghostface player, you're going to be fine, most likely going to be fine in most cases, I would say, when it comes down to the lower level, like just starting out, or like, you know, or even if you're like an average player, casual, whatever have you, like those areas are fine. That's where the vast majority of people are going to be at, and that'll be fine. Like, it's good to like kind of load them up every once in a while, sneak up on some people, scare them, and, you know, have a little bit of fun with that. That's perfectly fine. You can do that. That's all fun and dandy. You know what I mean? That's great. And if that's how you enjoy the character that way. You can do that. I personally play Ghostface a little bit differently, so my playstyle is a bit more chase focused, a bit more aggressive, and, you know, kind of working around the expose and things like that, and using that as leverage and those kinds of things. Those are how I play him, but that's not how everybody probably does. So even then, it can still be very challenging. I would completely agree with the odds here. I would say that you just want to play him in that way, where you can kind of be a little more strategic and have a little more fun with that as a change of pace, and as like a fun, just hop in, you just, you know, be sneaky and just kind of hit some people and whatnot, and just kind of do it that way.
Spot, you pop it and instant on them. At no point do you want to mark a survivor and then go on a long chase with them. That's not how Ghostface thrives. He has a few add-ons here and there with some nasty effects, but for the most part they are fairly restrained, not super scary. And I think most other killers use the meta perks better than Ghostface does. He just gets boiled down to a little bit. You
do not want to be in a super long chase with Ghostface, because, as I've mentioned many times, he doesn't have a chase power. Okay, he doesn't have like a chase power that can like allow you to get the downs any sooner. You can't, like, you know, he doesn't have like an M2 where he can like fly towards them and like grab them and stab them. That would be pretty cool, by the way. Because unless you have just a chase build, I would not try to go for chases like that on average, I would say, because he's very difficult to do. Like, you need to have your fundamentals down, you got to have your footwork down, you got to know how to anti-loop a lot of things in order to be able to leverage the game in that way. And like, it's going to be purely based off of your own knowledge and yourself as a player, compared to like other characters that you can say have knowledge of the ability, and then you can use the ability to help you in those chases and to help you get those downs. So I find him, he's even more limited than Trapper in some aspects. I mean, you can make a play even with Trapper, in my opinion. If you have some traps kind of placed and you got the right add-on equipped, of course, you can kind of make some plays with Trapper and kind of allow a little bit more to go with. Like with Ghostface, it's I find more limited than that, in my opinion. Even more limited than Freddy, you know, which is its own thing. you know, I could talk about Freddy for a bit too. So the one thing I will say though is at least Freddy has a teleport and he has anti-loop with his snares. So at least you have a little bit more in that sense. Completely agree with that. Completely agree with that. Stuff like pain res and dead man switch, like things like you know, things that as killer players we use for the meta are just a little bit stronger than other killers because they're gonna have that ability to create pressure based off of that, right? So you can get a quick down and then apply that pressure with those perks, or then you can and then go across the map and then boom, you can start a new chase, and then like that's how the meta stuff will start to kick in. With this guy, it's almost like you kind of need to have it equipped in order to at least make a play in the first place, because it's very difficult. I completely agree with that. That is unfortunately the case.
VH.s.x, but for the most part they are fairly restrained, not super scary, and I think most other killers use the meta perks better than Ghostface does. He just gets boiled down to a little bit of a basic M1 killer. Now that being said, if you play against survivors that don't deal with stealth very well, especially beginners, or if you get a really good lucky indoor map where you cannot be spotted from a mile away, that can really work out in your favor. Those maps are rarer than outdoor maps, but still, you know, if you get one of those, Ghostface definitely gets a little bit scarier.
So that I completely agree with too. Just ultimately, you know, he suffers on very big maps. He's gonna suffer on outdoor maps too. His reveal mechanics do make it very difficult to be able to sneak around a lot of the time. Oh, so don't forget the reveal mechanics, and then the add-ons are also very lackluster. And he doesn't have an M2 either. But obviously with Ghostface currently, it's very just kind of limited in that way. But hey, like he said, you can play him. You know, he's more fun in the sense that you can kind of play him casually. You know, just kind of go around and like kind of jump scare people and or like kind of be a little more strategic with your stalking and stuff like that, or finding cool angles and things like that. But ultimately, you are gonna have a little bit of some struggle if you go to the high levels, obviously, and it does kind of lose a little bit of the fun when you start to do a little bit too much of it. So that's my advice for it. That is my, you know, my take on the odds killer tier list here. I completely agree with where he's at. He really should be, honestly, I'd argue he should be a little bit lower because I think Myers kind of does it a little bit better, and his add-ons are just a little bit better, and Freddy's a little bit better in the sense he at least has an anti-loop. So at the very least he has something, you know, so that is very going to be very helpful, despite the fact that he's very low tier. He does have a very high pick rate, I believe. So but anyway, with that being said, thank you guys for watching and let me know what you guys think in the comments.